Hi everybody, welcome back to another episode of Animators React. This is a very special episode today. We're joined by Wallace and Gromit here, plus Feathers McGraw and Norbot. Wallace and Gromit were kind enough to bring two incredible guests with them.
I'm Nick Park, I'm the original creator of Wallace and Gromit and have also co-directed Vengeance Most Fowl with Merlin.
I'm Merlin Crossingham, creative director of Wallace and Gromit, also director with Nick of Vengeance Most Fowl.
Good grief, it's you! Again!
Nick, Merlin, and their studio Aardman Animations have played a foundational role in claymation and stop-motion animation. In this episode, we're going to go from the earliest Wallace and Gromit short films to the technical marvels of Vengeance Most Fowl. We're going to dig into a bunch of stories. This is going to be a good episode. Well, first and foremost, can we talk about these guys?
Yeah.
I mean, these are the models you used on camera.
Yeah.
These are the actual actors.
And the scale as well.
Oh, this is how big they are.
When you go close up, we go close up on a model this size.
All of Wallace's face and Gromit's face, it's all about the size of your thumbs and just be able to tweak the things in the way that you want.
I thought these were clay initially because, you know, it's called claymation.
In the early films and Grand Day Out, it was like a clay torso with aluminum wire inside. We say aluminium in the UK.
But the more recent Wallace and Gromit films, are they still made of clay?
When you look at Feathers, he's all clay. When you pick him up, you'll feel it.
Yeah.
But on Curse of the Were-Rabbit, we started using foam latex for Wallace's shoes and trousers.
And silicon has developed there, hasn't it, over the years?
Silicone, historically, you could have it looking good, but it wouldn't be durable enough or it would split. Now, you can more or less have both.
So these days, you're often using silicone pieces molded from the clay. Now, in the original pieces, there's a lot of like fingerprints and stuff like that in the models. I noticed you actually have some fingerprints here on his hand.
Yeah, and it's important that even though these silicon trousers, for example, and silicon sleeves, the originals are clay, and they have the fingerprints we deliberately make sure it's not too slick and not too smooth.
Even until very recently, the biggest problem was that silicone always looked shiny, and we want a very matte finish, so it looks like the clay. Our model making department discovered that when it's curing, if you sprinkle icing sugar on it, it gives a matte finish.
Wow, okay. How did they discover that?
I don't know.
Who was like, sugar, whatever?
The idea was to give it a very light sort of stippled effect. To stop the surface going completely smooth, icing sugar can just wash right out.
I have a bunch more questions about these puppets, but before we do, I want to step back in time to your origins as stop-motion animators. What is one of your favorite stop-motion pieces of all time?
Well, I was always a very big fan of King Kong. I used to pore over my brother's books on dinosaurs, imagining what it would be like to live among them. I remember I was about 11 when I first saw it, and this was like the first time you could actually see a dinosaur as a kid. It just opened up my imagination, and you just believed it. And that was Willis O'Brien. It looks kind of a bit crude now when you look like the dinosaur and stuff.
But it was cutting edge at the time.
It's still so impressive.
King Kong, he's got character, he's got an eyebrow, I think, that kind of moves up and down, which is not unlike Wallace.
How about you, Merlin?
A little later on, it'd be Jason and the Argonauts. The beauty of it was, when watching it, you're so in the film, you're lost in the movie, and then afterwards you go, hang on a minute. How did they do that? A lot of it's to do with Ray Harryhausen and his observation of posing and the way that the characters are moving like humans in a way that you don't really question. And the fact that it interacts, like there where the skeleton went over the top of the actor.
Yeah.
Even today that's difficult to do.
So hard to do.
He wanted the feeling that they existed in the same space. Ray Harryhausen very much opened the door for what we do today. There's no question.
So the first Wallace and Gromit film is A Grand Day Out.
We'll go somewhere where there's cheese.
This is a film that you made as a student?
Yeah, it was pretty much a student film and on a budget. And I started making it in about 1982 and it took me right through till 1989 to finish.
Wow.
Back then, you're building a lot of sets yourself and you're creating a world. Growing up, everything you saw on TV was as if shot on a stage, and it was nice to take it beyond, to a movie set, where it's lit and it's three-dimensional, and you believe that even though we're looking at that wall, we believe that there's another wall behind it.
Oh, hi there. It's me, Jordan Allen. Most of you probably didn't know, but I'm a British citizen, and this is exactly how we look when Americans aren't around. I actually travel back to the UK quite a bit. And one thing that really butters my crumbits, excuse me, is when I have to use my phone, but I can't find Wi-Fi. I end up with these huge roaming fees. But with today's sponsor, Airalo, I don't need to worry about that anymore. Airalo is the world's first eSIM store, which means you can download a digital data pack for over 200 countries the minute you land. Right on your phone. No physical SIM cards, no waste, and no more frantically searching for Wi-Fi. And guess what? It's trusted by over 20 million travelers, so you know it works. I can just fire up the Airalo app when I get off the plane, pick the plan I need, and I'm online in minutes. Download Airalo today and use our code Corridor3 to get $3 off your first eSIM. It's just the ticket, lads. No lines, no hidden fees, just pure convenience. So, install Airalo right now and enter code Corridor3 for $3 off. Trust me, once you experience traveling with Airalo, you'll never go back to roaming or clunky SIM cards. Righto, let's crack on and get back to the episode. Ta-ta!
What happened?
This shot with Wallace walking down the stairs, his trousers are separate. They're replacement legs on every single frame.
Oh, really? So you're just swapping in new pants or new legs every time?
That's right. I had about a set of 5. That last set of stairs got the actual replacements mixed up. Oh, yeah, there it is. Yeah.
So were you just like, whatever?
Oh, yeah, it wasn't possible to do the whole thing again. Back then, there was no video recording, to watch the shot back. It was all just done in camera.
Would you ever be worried doing a shot that's taking you 10, 12, 20 hours and then being like, I hope it's working?
Yeah. You only found out when the film came back from the labs.
So the first thing here, like the pouring of water, it's stop motion, so whatever you're taking a picture of has to be able to hold that position until you take your picture. How did you do that?
That was using cling film, sandwich wrap,
Okay.
Just take a piece of it and stretch it a bit and it just looked like water and replace it every frame. If you put sound effect on, you just believe it.
Yeah.
It's dead simple to do.
How'd you do the water running down the walls?
Oh, that was wood varnish. The camera was manually operated. I had to measure it with like a tape measure and just move on a little crane, and I would turn the gears and it would go down another 2 millimeters or something every frame.
And then you have some welding here. It's a really nifty effect, which what I assume is like a sparkler or something like that.
It was a sparkler, and because actually what I didn't realize is that the sparkler was so hot it set fire to the set. That shot where Wallace is hammering is the most naive, simple shot in the film, but it was kind of done on purpose to be kind of ridiculous. There's no other body movement.
And the sound effects like da 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 da.
And then this was kind of my first gag, really, in Grande Out, and my first bit of go motion.
Yeah, I was gonna say, so you have motion blur there.
Yeah, he was on some kind of axle that went through the drill and just replaced him with another Gromit with his arms out. Every time it took a frame, just spun him a bit on a second exposure or something. This is the first Gromit shot I did in the whole film.
Wow.
In that shot, it was so hard to get near a mouth and sculpt anything that I just discovered the eyebrow, and I could express everything Gromit felt just by moving the eyebrow. And in that very shot, Gromit was born.
Could I challenge you to put some expressions on him?
Oh, yeah. He won't be as malleable, but you can probably do a little bit. You usually have to have some contrast, so he starts like looking serious or something, or frowning. Yeah. There's the frown. Maybe lifting one brow or something. And then maybe if he starts to kind of look surprised or something, you might start by moving the middle up a bit by bit.
How would you show me like happiness?
Happiness. Well, it doesn't really have a happy expression. Gromit's key to everything is the protagonist, really, and it's about how he reacts to everything. Wallace is the agent of chaos.
You're getting this like solid like straight man comedy from Gromit, which is like, it's so nuanced.
It's like the beauty of clay, really.
Yeah.
It's what clay is so good at. We can be so, as you say, nuanced and express feelings which are quite sophisticated, actually, that has a depth and humanity to it. I think it's because you're in contact with the puppet every single frame, just tweaking and teasing out the emotions, and almost like discovering it as you go.
Set coordinates for 62 West Wallaby Street.
The thing that really strikes me when I'm watching this is just how like handmade and DIY everything looks. Like the characters themselves, they have a roughness. Is that an aesthetic you're trying to bring to this?
I wanted it to be kind of hand-fitted, you know, like not too fine or anything. You know, the tactile nature of everything. It's part of the humour, I think, that comes with clay. It's more Simpsons animation than Disney.
Not to worry, Miss Pennyfarthing. Crumble will soon have your garden gnomes back in tip-top condition.
I think there's a kind of a nice matter-of-factness about it. Its lack of fussiness, I think, are one of the things that established the style.
I mean, I think it's a little bit of imperfection that keeps stuff feeling human. When we have two legends on the couch like this on a React episode, we make very special extended editions on our website, corridordigital.com. If you like the show and you enjoy watching, well, you get the episodes a day early and you get the special extended versions. So consider subscribing, and it really supports us and helps us stay independent. $3.99 a month. So the next Wallace and Gromit short was called The Wrong Trousers, and that came out in 1993. The train sequence, it's pretty amazing. The feeling of speed and movement and like just the hectic nature of everything. Not to mention like the background's moving by. Nothing's moving when you're taking your picture. So how are you doing this? How are you making it fly by like that?
Very much wanted it to be a erratic and fastest thing you've ever seen sequence. We built a set of 20, 30 feet long, but it meant going at the speed we wanted to go, we would run out of set easily, so we had to find ways of repeating the set if a shot lasted more than a second and a half.
I was assuming that when you did the sequence, that the characters are sitting still with the camera on a tripod and you're sliding the whole set by.
It's the opposite.
It's the opposite. You guys actually moved the characters down.
Yeah, the train, with Gromit on, for example, is attached to the camera, and the camera's on rails. And every time we take a frame, the animator would move Gromit, would then take the camera back and push it, and take the frame at a certain point.
And you do it while the camera was moving?
And it would be an exposure of a second or two.
Wow.
But you'd have to move between the two marks in that time. So you couldn't just push it, you'd have to go practice it and go and go.
Yeah, so it's very, kind of in a way, non-precise.
So when you'd be animating and you get to the end of your 30 feet of set, but the scene's not done, you just roll the characters all the way back to the beginning.
That's why we had foreground furniture whizzing by, because that gave a good kind of cutting point to jump back to the beginning again.
Wow.
We'd run out of stuff.
I love this sequence.
By the way, people have left messages on YouTube to say, this gun shoots 8 bullets.
So in The Wrong Trousers, there's a scene where Wallace is walking up the side of the wall, and you also have other characters that are like sitting on ledges, and you're dealing with all these different directions of gravity. Like, are you just bolting in your characters into the, like, how are you doing that without them falling over?
Because Wallace's legs, it would put a lot of strain on the joints of his legs. So when on this shot, we tipped the whole set on its side.
Okay.
And tipped the camera on its side. And it was more easy to get a track than it was to get a crane. And the difficult bit was sticking feathers to Wallace's trousers there.
No chicken escapes from Tweedy's farm!
So Chicken Run was the first feature film from Aardman, and that came out in 2000. Was this the first feature film that you animated for?
Yeah, it was, yeah. We sort of didn't know what we didn't know. We were very much pioneering techniques or adopting techniques that we'd heard about from Nightmare Before Christmas.
Yeah, we were very nervous, as it was our first feature, whether our stop motion would work for the cinema. So we did a lot of testing to start with.
What was one of the challenges or something that you guys learned going into this? We're like, oh, this worked for shorts, but it doesn't work for a feature film.
At the beginning of Chicken Run, we tried to do it without post-production cleanup or removing the rigging equipment digitally. And this was very much in the early days of post-production when it was still very expensive. After trying to do the first kind of half dozen shots with no post, the producers realized the film was never going to get made. So we did then have post-production cleanup on Chicken Run. But we did try to do it all in camera.
It seems like one of the hardest things about doing animation without any digital cleanup is when you have to make the characters look airborne. You showed me this cross section here, and you had these mounting points where you could put like an arm on the character to have them lifted in the air. But how do you hide that arm, especially in the days before digital post-processing?
If you can't hide the rig, you use fishing wire. So you have like a cradle above the set with kind of arms with spindles on, which you can wind and you can sort of hold the character in midair, and then that would be on some kind of moving rig. There's a shot where the dog runs towards camera, and I animated that, and that has no post-production on it.
Wow.
The problem is that you could see the strings. So I had to move the rig every frame, so the strings are there dancing around.
Wow.
We would find ways of just doing it, wouldn't we,
Yeah.
that went in camera.
There's a whole shot where all the chickens run towards the camera, and that was done practically with a big scaffolding bar, and the rig is hidden behind them. Just setting the rig up took weeks. It actually didn't take that long to animate, but it just was impractical.
I'm noticing that you're animating the character on every other frame, so that would be on 2s, rather than every single frame, which would be on 1s.
Pretty much everything Aardman does is on double frames, unless there's a camera move.
Because if both the characters were on 2s and the background were on 2s, everything would just feel really jittery.
Yeah. We've developed a technique we call 1.5. You'd hit a pose, take the frame, the camera would advance, and rather than going to a fresh pose, you keep the pose, but just move the character using your frame store to match the camera move. And if you've got a limb that's going counter, you might need to just tweak that to match its previous position. You're maintaining the position, but just matching the movement, and that way you eliminate the clatter.
But you're still doing like the actual fine-tune animation on 2s, yeah.
On Chicken Run, things were a lot slicker than later because once we got this confidence of seeing that it works, like when we came to do Curse of the Were-Rabbit, we consciously went back to loving thumbprints.
Yeah, just having a bit more confidence.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm your nifty odd-jobbing robot. Call me Norbot.
So now in the newest film, Vengeance Most Fowl, we get to see the modern version of these characters. They haven't strayed that far from the early versions.
Yeah, throughout each film, they've sort of become rounder and Gromit's nose was more pear-shaped.
So in the early Wallace and Gromits, you're dealing with a fully clay figure and you're literally resculpting it every single frame. I know, for example, like A Nightmare Before Christmas, they had faces for Jack Skellington that they'd swap out depending on the expression that they want. What's the technique that you're using these days? Are you shaping the face for every single frame or are you swapping things out? What's the approach?
They're clay heads, aren't they? But they've got these clay replacement mouths. Each animator has a whole set, but they stay clay because we want to keep it organic, so the animator can tweak.
Interesting.
It's actually only about 14 mouths. They're the basic phonetic shapes. Essentially, every single facial expression is unique because it's malleable.
Because suddenly the crew got bigger, more animators needed to be kept on model, you know, otherwise everyone has their own kind of different style. And then it speeded up the animation of production as well.
So this opening scene, I'm seeing the foam sloshing around in Wallace's bath. What are you guys using for that foam?
That's actually foam resin called plastizote. Kind of has a glistening nature, and it looks like foam when it's carved. And then we've got glass beads and wax added on for variation in size. And within the bath there, it's just Wallace's head on a stick. And I think there's about 4 or 5 layers that kind of slide against each other. So it's mostly hand animated. Even those bubbles that are flying are mostly hand animated. And I think there's a couple CG ones, but all of the others were on wires and animated by hand.
Okay, wow.
It's not what it's made of, but the way the animator has interpreted the movement that tells you what it is.
Come on, I need your help.
And actually that shot there, technically that was an interesting one because we went from a Gromit on his haunches and he swapped puppet as he went onto all fours. So we have 4 different kinds of Gromit. We've got this kind of Gromit that's on all fours. We have standing Gromit, we have a sitting Gromit, and we have a squatting Gromit. And actually we have 2 kinds of squatting Gromit. We've got squatting Gromit where he's got human shoulders like that, and we've got a squatting Gromit where he's sat like a dog.
What was the decision to have Gromit walk on 2 legs? Like, where did that come from?
I guess it just evolved from a grand day out. The rules remained sort of a bit vague, but it became obvious that he should never just stand up of his own volition. Because otherwise he looks like naked.
Yeah.
He looks like a person in a suit.
Yeah.
Always has to be a justification for him standing up, like he's pushing a trolley or he's got boots on and he's doing something.
He's usually wearing an apron or he's behind a counter.
So he doesn't look like a naked person.
Feathers McGraw is the most challenging element of Vengeance Most Fowl because he's so graphically simple. He doesn't have any form of performance other than a blink and maybe the turn of a head. And you know, when he walks, he just sort of glides. So he actually becomes the most cinematic character because you have to use music, you have to use lighting, you have to use the camera moves. One of the things that kept him alive are the highlights in his eyes. If he turned away from a key light and there was no highlight, he switched off. And so we worked very hard with the camera team to always have a highlight in his eyes. Even if there wasn't a motivated light source, they would cheat one in.
So that ending sequence with the boats is amazing, but it seems like it would be a huge technical challenge.
We didn't want to try and compete with the wrong trousers ending. So it's, in a way, this is a complete opposite kind of antidote to that. Like the slowest possible chase. That barge is CGI.
Oh, the whole, wow. Indistinguishable.
So we used that shot, and then there's a big crane shot where we find the aqueduct for the first time. Those two boats are also CG, and that's the only time we used CG boats.
You have a lot of water happening. And, you know, obviously water doesn't hold still unless you freeze it. And your studio's probably not that cold. How are you guys doing the water here?
Particle simulation. We would LiDAR scan the set to make a 3D proxy, and then they would just match the stop motion barge with this CG proxy so that then they could get the water to react off the boat and off the banks. And where we couldn't shoot a LiDAR scan, we would shoot the shot in stereo so that they could make a depth map from the images.
Oh, cool. Very cool. Smart.
It was important to make that the water looked fitted with the stop motion world.
All of these water sims are made for live action visual effects.
Right.
So the base starting point is realism.
Right.
So there's a lot of detail.
It just doesn't fit with
And it just doesn't fit. That's one of the things that we've struggled on Vengeance Most Foul, is that we've used a lot of the very latest in visual effects, but to make them feel comfortable in the lumpy, bumpy world that we embrace, it was actually really quite challenging.
I can totally see that. Because the water here feels like it's part of like a model.
That's right. The particle sizes, the complexity of the detail is reduced a little bit. Transparency. So it looks slightly more gooey, if you like. The colour of the water was really important. Having the foam on the top.
But it was all very much led by the stop motion.
Oh, this'll work a treat.
All the backgrounds here are quite interesting, isn't it?
Yes.
Are those real?
They are real, but we didn't have enough time to shoot all of them bespoke for the shot. The art department set up probably about 40 feet of set, and we shot it on motion control with a 360 camera that shot at 12K or something, and we'd shoot passes very slow, and then because it was a 360 camera, we could take that image and we could scroll around it to get any camera angle, punch into it for close-ups or go wide, and we could choose, and because it was shot slow, we could ramp it to shoot the speed of the shot that we hadn't shot yet. So they were all shot beforehand, and then we fitted them in terms of time. It saved us a huge amount.
Using clay for stop motion is one thing, but what if you tried to use motion capture and 3D printing for stop motion animation? That's an experiment that Daniel and Ren have taken on these past couple months at Corridor, and that's coming out next week. So subscribe to the channel so you don't miss it. We have lots and lots of little 3D plastic Rens all around the studio now. Wallace and Gromit have been beloved characters for about 35 years now. Why do you think they've persisted for so long?
I think the fact that it's clay is actually a very strong aspect of all this, that people can relate to how it's done.
That's really key, actually, for all the refinement that we have in a film like Vengeance Most Foul. There are lumps and bumps and imperfections. We embrace the thumbprints still. The human touch is vital.
Also, as animators, we have to love these characters. That will show, and if we're true in that way, then people will pick up on that. You know, we're a world of pet lovers, particularly dog lovers, and we all believe our animals have human attributes and can understand everything.
What advice would you guys have for somebody that wants to get into stop motion these days and like make a career out of it?
Don't.
So compared with when Nick and I were young animators, getting hold of the machinery to do stop motion, most people have it in their pocket. If you've got a smartphone, there are free apps, you can have a go. Roll your sleeves up and dig in.
The art of stop motion is not just about moving puppets and frame by frame. It's about making the audience believe that those characters are thinking and feeling and have a soul.
You have to act through the puppet. That's the primary job, really, of the animator, is to be the performer.
Nick, Merlin, thank you so much for joining us here. It's been an absolute honor and a pleasure. Everybody, go check out Vengeance Most Foul on Netflix. Thanks again so much, guys. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having us.
It's been a pleasure.
See you guys in the next one.
Bye.